Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm going to do a walkthrough of FuncBud and a review of it. So I'll walk you through the UI and explain what everything does. So what FuncBud is a Midi generator, and it uses maths basically to determine, well, you can set mathematical functions that will determine the progression of notes in a sequence. So here I'm using two instances to play two instances of piano tech. And I've just put a few little variations here. Like if we look at the top part of each instance, they're identical, except one of them, the minimum octave is 3, and in the other it's 4. But everything else is identical there. If we look here at the functions which are actually determining which notes will be generated are also identical, except this fourth one. Here it's a square root plus 1, and here plus 2. And then here, one of them, the rate is 1/8 notes, and in the other it is dotted eighths. And so just by making a sequence that you like and then maybe taking it, copying it into another instance, I just use the AUM internal preset system because FuncBud doesn't have its own preset system. I just take it and open the same preset over here in this other instance and then change it a little bit to get something I like and then play them together. That's mainly how I've been using this app so far. I don't find it that interesting to use just one instance, and the main reason is because you can only set just one rate, and that rate is just going to go on through the entire sequence. It can honestly get a bit boring when sequencers do that. For me anyway. So let's get down to understanding how everything works here. Actually, first let me just let you hear another little demo. So you can't see FuncBud here, but it's what's generating all the notes. And I also used piano tech again, a kalimba and grand piano. So that sounded really nice, I thought. So let's just look here. Now I should mention, by the way, this I'm also using Midi gates. So Midi gates is basically a Midi note filter, and there are different ways that we can filter notes. But here I'm just using a very simple way, using the slider to determine what percentage of notes will pass through. So I've set it so that 93% of notes will be passed through. It just means that there will sometimes be some little silences in the output, and I find that interesting to just bring a little bit of variety into things. Now, FuncBud does have its own rests system, so I can mute this, for example, so there'll be a rest every time it reaches that point in the sequence. But I kind of like using Midi gates. It has some advantages. So let's just take something here. Really simple. So, as I mentioned, when you open the app, well, no, I didn't mention actually, but it doesn't have its own preset system. So that's a bit of a bummer because it doesn't come with any presets. All it has is just one, like init patch, which is basically this, but I just tweaked this a tiny little bit. Basically, I brought this root note down here to B3. So the init patch is just like this, but the root note is C3. And that's all you get. And I think that's an awful pity, because I think when people get an app like this, they would like to have a bunch of presets that show you what it can do right out of the box. Before you have to sit down, you've just got this one, thing playing, and you don't really know how to use the app and whatever, it'd be great if it had, 20 or 30 different presets in there. I mean, who knows? Maybe by the time the release version comes out, it will have that, but it doesn't in the version I'm looking at, the beta version. So, yeah. So let's understand the maths stuff that's going on in this app. So, here we have this list of functions, and it says x plus 1, x plus 2, x minus 4. Now, um, x, when you have a list and x is at the beginning, what it's going to use for the value of x is the root note. So here, it's going to take a B3, and now the key is C, and the scale is major. So um, if you think about a major scale, okay, it's just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, right? So if we take the X as B3 and we add 1, that means that it's going to play C3. And then it's going to move to the next step. And the note that it's going to play is going to be X plus 2. Now here, X will mean the note that was played here. So if you remember, we said that was a C. So here it's going to take X plus 2. Because we're on C major, it's going to play C, D, E. Okay, so it's going to play an E. So this will play a C, this will play an E. Now, because this played an E here, X will mean E. That will be the value of X here, E3. And it's going to subtract 4 from that. So if we work backwards in the C major scale from an E, it means it's going to play an A. And then it's going to go here, and it's going to play A plus 1. So now it's going to play a B here. So if you remember, the first time it played a C here, but now it's going to play a B here. And then here it's going to play a D, and so on, right? So then we get a pattern that sounds like this. So it's basically like 3 ascending notes, and then, you go down and play a note that's below them and then ascend again from there, right? So why I changed it to B3 as the root is because it just seemed a bit weird for the demo preset, the only one preset that's there, um, to start with a D because it had root as C3, and it had the X plus 1, so it actually played a D. It was just a bit strange. So that's why I brought the root note down to B3 here. So if we look down at the bottom of the screen, we can add new functions with the calculator, or maybe faster way is to just use the library. So you can just scroll down and find something you want and add it in. Now, let's look at the calculator. So, whoops. So we have, just our like numerical keypad or whatever here. We can just trash the whole thing. It's just, delete the last entry. And here we just got our normal stuff. But then over here, okay, we've got parentheses. So we've got X. So we've already talked about what X means. If it's the first thing, it's going to play the root note. If it's anywhere else, it's basically going to play whatever the value of the last note was, including when it goes back to the start of the sequence after already having played through once. Then now it's not going to be the root note anymore. It's going to be whatever the last note was. Alpha here, this will play the root note. Now here we can do squares and square roots. So here I would just type 4 and maybe 4 squared. And here I could do a square root, square root of 5, for example. And then here, this sigma, and pi. So in this app, it will remember the last 64 notes that it generated. So if I take this and I put in, let's say, 5, this will take whatever the last 5 notes were, and it will add them together to create a new note. Now, this will be based on, Midi note numbers and everything, okay, and then using this to quantize it or whatever. So yeah, when you choose this, it will add them together. But if you choose this pi one, it will multiply. Let me clear that. So yeah, I mean, just to give you an example, like a theoretical example, let's say the last 2 notes played, just again as an example, had a value of, say, 2 and 6. If you had this pi 2, it would multiply those, so you would have 2 multiplied by 6, so it would be a value of 12. If instead you chose this sigma and you took the last 2 notes and they were 2 and 6, now it would add them together, so it would create a value of 8. So the point of this is, though, that this can maybe create a bit of dynamism. So let's have a little listen. So you see, because these are playing different notes every time anyway. So then when this is going to sum the last 2 values that were played, it's also going to be a bit different every time. So just a way of adding a bit more variety in. So, right, so we've looked at all those functions are. I looked at what all those functions are. So as I mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention this, but actually it's not that complicated. And in fact, maybe it's not complicated enough, because this doesn't have any logic functions. There's no, conditionals. If something happens, then do X, whatever. There's nothing like that. So I don't know, would this really satisfy some like hardcore math heads who are into that kind of sequencing? I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, so that's basically the way that works. And yeah, what I said also now is, I think it's a pity that here you just set minimum and maximum octave, because to me it would make a lot more sense to be able to set a minimum note and a maximum note. You could then tweak the maximum note, for example, just move it down a little bit, slide it down a little bit while you're performing, and it would bring in really interesting variations into the sequence. So yeah, I think that's a pity really that it doesn't have that. So it definitely seems like it's something that could be developed a bit more. Now let's just change this to something else. So down here, down at the bottom, right? I'm really hating using this mouse along with my fingers. It just messes everything up switching between them. But there are times when I really want to touch the screen instead of just using the mouse all the time. So yeah, here are rate with like triplets and dotted and normal. 16 bars up to 30-second. So if you see what I mean, it can really get a little bit boring when you have a sequence that's just the same rate all the time. Now, you can change the gate, but that's not really the same as if we had, like, let's say, one normal rate, like say a quarter note, and then another rate, like a dotted eighth or something. But the gate can just make some of our notes longer. Oh, okay, we got the variety on there. Yeah, so You see, even when I turned the gate down all the way, because we still had a bit of variety there, it was still able to generate notes. So if you really want everything silenced, then you better have no value in variety and turn the gate all the way down to 0. So that's very staccato and here longer notes. So yeah, I like to use the variety sliders definitely to just bring in a little bit of variety to the velocity and the gate. And we have swing as well. So yeah, as mentioned, we've also got the editing function, which is really important for being able to reorder things. And that's something you can maybe experiment with doing while you're playing live. And then we can just clear everything using this. And then here in settings, we can set a CC number that we can use to modulate the patterns. It would, of course, be much more convenient if you could just kind of set up a song mode, but Cem has another app which you can use for that called FuncBud. And you can set stuff like the Midi in and Midi out channels. Scale and key is here. I think it should be removed from there because it's on the main UI anyway, so it's not really needed here. You've got this loop detector, so if you're stuck in a loop, you can maybe avoid those. I haven't got 100. Well, Cem told me, I think, that if we turn this on and we set 3 here, then what it will mean is that if you have a loop of 3 notes, like 3 notes that just keep repeating, you know, ABC, ABC, whatever like that. If you have that, then if you set this to 3, it will understand that you don't want a 3-note loop, and it will add in a +1. I think he said it's on the on the first step. This, you know, when it comes to the second pass, it'll add a 1 to it. So, like for example, if this was being problematic, it would change this to x +4 on the second pass. But I did some experiments with this, recording the output into a piano roll, and that's not really how I found it working. So I'm a bit unclear really about how this really works. We talked about this earlier in the video. Calculations enabled on the mute functions, you can have that on or off. So when you mute a step, when you turn it into a rest, will the calculation still happen or not? That's what you determine here. You've got the tutorial here, and that'll open the standalone app, and then it'll take you through a little kind of help guide. So let's just finish off with what my general impressions of the app are and what I think could be improved and so on is. So first of all, the tutorial, it's useful to have that, but I do kind of wish that there was a manual as well. And what I also wish is that the tutorial maybe had forward and backwards buttons so that you could quickly jump back. Because sometimes what I found was I was reading the tutorial and then I went on and then I thought, oh, you know, I want to go back, but I just couldn't go back. I had to keep going forward and start, or I had to exit and start the whole tutorial again. So yeah, it'd be nice if there was just a manual where you could quickly just search for what you're looking for. Now, the general concept of the app, I definitely did get some interesting things from this, but I'm not 100% sure would I really enjoy, especially if I wanted to make something long and complex, typing in these functions. And sometimes wondered whether I would just get just as interesting output from something that was using a random generator. I mean, it would be different, but I don't know. You know, I feel like I would rather just maybe choose the notes directly and put them in. But yeah, you know, comment in the comments. Do you like? Is this more your cup of tea or what? I'm not 100% sure. And then I thought for people who really are into all the kind of math way of thinking about music, then as mentioned earlier, they would probably really like it if there were more complex features in this app, like yeah, logic stuff, if then, and so on. And I think those are my main comments, really, to be honest. Oh, yeah, also just to wish that there were more presets that came with the app because it just has that one init patch and that's it. So it really, really would benefit from more presets. Another thing, as I mentioned, even though I've got an external keyboard attached, I'm not able to use the keyboard to type in functions here. And I kind of wish that you could. Another thing that I think would be even better, again, I said it can get a little bit tedious typing in long lists of functions here using the calculator or even using the library. It seems to me that it would be good to have some kind of copy and paste system so that you could just use a text editor and you could write out your functions, just like this maybe, and put a line break or something between each and then just copy and paste them in. I mean, I'm not sure about the technical aspects. Maybe, it'd be difficult to do that. It probably is. But I'm just saying that, yeah, uh, it feels a bit clunky sometimes just having to do all this stuff. It's good, mind you, that you can have the editor to be able to move things around. If it didn't have that, it would really be a pain because if you wanted to change something at the start, you'd have to just redo the whole thing again. Well, thank God for the editor, you don't have to do that. So I hope you found this useful, everyone. If you did, please leave a like and write a comment. Helps the algorithm. And if you can support me on Patreon, it would be really fantastic. You can see my Patreon link in the pinned comment. Or if you don't like, regular donations like that, like Patreon style, I also have a link for one-off donations. It'd be brilliant if more people donated because the money from YouTube is just like nothing, really, almost. Okay, everyone, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.